Typhoon Mekkhala has rapidly intensified from a Category 1 to a Category 4 typhoon over the last 24 hours and could briefly become a Category 5 typhoon before gradually weakening and potentially bring some significant impacts to portions of southern and central Japan later this week. So anyways, let's get straight to this emergency update on Typhoon Mekkhala. First of all, looking at the Joint Typhoon Warning Center's official forecast for Typhoon Mekkhala, you can see right now it's located a few hundred miles to the northeast of the Philippines. Right now it's at 125 knots, which is 145 miles an hour, and they currently have it peaking at around 130 knots, which is 150 miles an hour. However, how rapidly the storm has been strengthening, I won't be surprised if it reaches up towards 155 to 165 miles an hour at its peak, but that won't make much of a difference because it will still gradually weaken, and by 12Z on the 25th of June, which is just a few days from now, it will only be at 75 knots, which is 85 miles an hour, as it passes a few hundred miles to the east of Taiwan, and eventually will impact those islands, including the island of Kadena and the island of Amami Ushima there, and that will potentially bring some tropical storm to typhoon force sustained winds in those areas, with sustained winds likely around 40 to 70 miles an hour, with some wind gusts reaching up to 60 to 80 miles an hour in those areas, and eventually will move towards southern portions of Japan there, impacting areas like Yakushima, Kyoto, and Tokyo, where they could see some tropical storm force winds up to 60 to 65 miles an hour, and sustained winds and even higher wind gusts, and they could also see some significant flash flooding, and you actually can't see it up there, but that does say 45 knots above there. The forecast cone has just gone so large that I cannot fit it in the video there, but generally it does look like this system could bring some significant impacts to Japan, and we will talk about that closer to the end of this video. Now, I did want to briefly talk about this as well. I'm not going to go in much detail about this system yet, but you can see several hundred miles to the east of Typhoon Mekkhala, we actually do have another invest out there called 94W, and this does have a high chance of formation within the next 24 hours, and it could become a tropical storm or a typhoon over the next several days as it generally moves to the west and the northwest, and eventually to the north and the east there, up towards Japan, and it will likely stay well to the east of this system, and it probably will impact Japan very much, but I will monitor this system for future updates in case we track shifts farther west or farther north. So now, looking at Google AI weather model here, this is a ton of ensembles combined into one model here. So basically, the ensembles are all different model runs. You can see them in all the different lines there, and then they mix them all into a pretty accurate forecast sometimes. So you can see if we go just about 6 hours out from now, you can see Typhoon Mekkhala has around reached its peak as either a high in Category 4 typhoon or a low in Category 5 typhoon there, relatively east of Luzon there, relatively southeast of Taiwan, and you can see in this 94W is already having tropical storm force winds, but it's not organized enough to be a tropical storm. If we go about 1 day up from now, you can see Typhoon Mekkhala starts to weaken gradually. It's only a high in Category 3 typhoon by then event. You also have 94W over there, which is still a low pressure system with some tropical storm force winds. If we go even farther in the future here, if we go to about 2 days out, which is Wednesday at around 6 UTC as the model run here, you can see Typhoon Mekkhala is only a high in Category 1 typhoon, but we also will have a tropical storm from 94W there. And you can see as we move it forward even more to about 3 days out, Typhoon Mekkhala has weakened to a tropical storm, while 94W has become a Category 1 typhoon. And if we push it forward even more, you can see eventually both of these systems will be pretty close together, within a few hundred miles of each other, and they will both be around the same strength, although 94W will be a little stronger, and then eventually Typhoon Mekkhala could actually become a typhoon again as it passes by Japan, a low in Category 1 typhoon, and 94W is slowly weakening as well, and eventually both of these systems weaken and move east. 94W dissipates about 5 days out from now, and Typhoon Mekkhala, it has it dissipating all the way up to 7 days out from now as it moves up toward portions of southwestern Japan, where those islands owned by, Alaska there, my bad, and it could actually become an extratropical system there and potentially head towards Alaska, like a lot of typhoons do. And you can also see a potential tropical storm out by the Philippines at about 6 days out, and to 7 days out, you can also see another potential tropical storm several hundred miles to the east there, well to the east of Guam as well, so those will be areas to watch. Now looking at the satellite imagery for Typhoon Mekkhala, you can see it has a very, very well-defined eye in the center there. You can see some pretty intense convection around it. You can also see the outer bands are starting to wrap around there to the west and the south there. It has some nice inflow from the southwest and some nice outflow to the northeast there. And you can see, with stronger typhoons, you usually see bands of outflow instead of just random outflow. You're starting to see that with the system, and it has rapidly intensified from 85 miles an hour to 145 miles an hour over the last 24 hours as of the last update, and that is well over the qualifications for rapid intensification. Just so you know, rapid intensification is at least 35 miles an hour for 24 hours. This has rapidly intensified by 60 miles an hour in 24 hours. That is quite impressive. That does happen a lot in the Western Pacific Ocean, but it's also not super common. But you can see just very organized system. You can see a inner eye wall and an outer eye wall. Now you can see the outer bands are looking very well there, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing some tornadoes and heavy rain out in portions of Luzon there. I did hear some reports of some tornadoes of the Philippines potentially associated with the system. You can see it's going to move up towards the north, towards Taiwan, east of Taiwan, where over the coming days, if we look at the satellite loop for this system, you can see it's pretty much stays organized as it has been over the last several hours here. You can see there may be even a little bit of cloud cover over the eye there, but nothing too concerning. It has been having a good look, and it generally looks like it's still trying to intensify, and that's why I believe it could potentially briefly become a Category 5 typhoon. Now looking at the satellite imagery for Invis 94W, you can see right now there's quite a bit of convection on the southern side of the system. You can see there's also some thunderstorms starting to pop up on the northern side of the system, and it's near some of those islands. We don't know what those are, but hopefully you guys know what those are out there. But if you're in those islands, you will likely see some heavy rainfall. You may already be seeing that, and that will continue over the next day or so as the system moves to the north and the west here. If we look at the satellite loop for the system, you can see that it has been organizing quite well over the past several hours. You can start to see some rotation in the system, and you can see some pretty good convection of the southern side of the system. Not as much convection around the center of the northern side, but as it starts to strengthen into a tropical storm or typhoon, I would expect that we do start to see a lot more convection towards the center of the northern side of the system, especially the outer bands of the northern side. So, some of you that are in portions of Japan may be wondering what you could do to prepare for the system. Well, it's not going to be super significant, but make sure you're just prepared for some tropical storm force winds ranging from around 45 miles an hour in sustained winds to up to 70 miles an hour in sustained winds. It won't be super significant, but just make sure you probably just don't go outside in this system, because it could still be very windy outside, but it's not going to be a very, very strong typhoon either. You could also see some thunderstorms out there, so make sure to stay indoors if there's any lightning, and also make sure you are prepared for at least some flash flooding. It will be a fast-moving system, but again, it will probably be very large in wind field, so we could still see some flash flooding out there. But this will probably just be about the same as Typhoon Jingmi. If you remember how that system went, just make sure you're prepared for about a similar intensity of the system for this, and you should be perfectly fine if you do that. Anyways, that's the end of today's weather forecast. If you're in the impacted areas in Japan for Typhoon Mekkhala, just make sure, again, to have your preparations done within the next few days. And also, if you know anyone in the impacted areas, just let them know about the system if they haven't heard about it already. They probably have heard about, but just in case there's a chance they haven't heard about, just let them know just to make sure. And I will see you on the next weather forecast, whenever that will be. Potentially tomorrow, maybe in a couple of days, it depends. But goodbye!